What would you do if I sang out of tune? What
One pill makes you larger and one makes you...
Welcome back to the Rock Vault, where the amps are always hot. Today, we're stepping into the mud, music, and magic of Woodstock '69. When The Who took the stage in the early morning hours of August 17th, 1969, Woodstock was chaos incarnate. Rain, exhaustion, and technical breakdowns had turned the festival into a sleepless, muddy dream. Then came the roar of Pete Townshend's guitar. Sharp, defiant, unmistakable. With Roger Daltrey's golden mane glinting under the spotlights, they launched into Tommy, their rock opera masterpiece. For 500,000 people, See Me, Feel Me wasn't just a song, it was transcendence. The Who weren't built for peace and love. They were built for power. Townshend's windmill strums sliced through the dawn air like electricity reborn, while Keith Moon drummed as if the world might collapse beneath him. But amid the thunder came this gentle, almost spiritual refrain. See me, feel me. It rose above the noise, a plea for understanding in a time when everything felt uncertain. The crowd, battered, barefoot, and half delirious, began to sway, drawn into the moment. By then, The Who had already cemented themselves as the loudest band in rock. But Woodstock made them prophets. See me, feel me became their sermon. A call to connect, to feel something real after days of sensory overload. You could sense the fatigue melting away as thousands of voices joined Daltrey's, echoing through the mist like a prayer. It's easy to forget how fragile that performance really was. The stage lights flickered, the mud threatened the gear, and Townshend was visibly furious after dealing with political chaos backstage. Yet when that climactic section arrived, Daltrey singing "Listening to You Bricks Hoot Hotaksu" with every ounce of his soul, the hostility faded. For a brief moment, the music united everyone. Even the broken amplifiers seemed to surrender to the emotion. Woodstock wasn't just about rebellion. It was about release. And no song captured that catharsis like this one. The Who gave the crowd something sacred, a chance to rise above the exhaustion and chaos, and remember why they came in the first place. As the last chords faded and the sun climbed higher, See Me, Feel Me echoed across the muddy fields like a hymn. The Who didn't just perform, they redeemed the moment. It was the sound of morning breaking on a generation's wildest dream. When Santana took the stage on Saturday afternoon, most of the crowd had never even heard of them. They didn't have an album out yet, just raw talent and a few gigs around San Francisco. But when those first Latin rock rhythms exploded across the field, everything changed. Soul Sacrifice wasn't just a performance, it was ignition. Congas, cowbells, and searing guitar blended into something primal. Carlos Santana's fingers danced over the fretboard like lightning striking in rhythm. The song built like a storm. Michael Shreve, only 20 years old, unleashed a drum solo so intense it seemed to suspend time. The camera panned across faces in the audience, eyes closed, bodies swaying, some in disbelief at what they were witnessing. You could feel the sweat, the smoke, the pulse of something new being born. This wasn't blues, or psychedelia, or Latin jazz. It was everything at once. A young band from the Bay Area had just rewritten the rules of rock before 500,000 people. At Woodstock, so many acts were already legends. The Who, Janis, Hendrix. But Santana arrived as outsiders and left immortal. Soul Sacrifice was pure spiritual release, the kind that made strangers hug, dance, or just stare up at the sky in awe. The mix of Latin percussion and electric rock had never been heard on a stage that massive, and in that moment, it united every heartbeat in the crowd. Shreve's solo became a vision of its own. primal energy channeled through sticks and skin. He played like someone possessed, matching Santana's guitar note for note, rhythm for rhythm, in perfect conversation. When Carlos came back in with that screaming lead, the entire field erupted. No lyrics were needed. The music said everything. It was wild, free, and dangerously alive. The beauty of Soul Sacrifice is that it captured what Woodstock felt like. Unpredictable, euphoric, and spiritual. You didn't have to understand it. You just felt it in your chest. Santana's set turned mud into magic, sweat into soul. It was a ritual, not a performance, a moment when sound transcended genre and generation alike. When the last note dissolved into the humid air, Santana was no longer an unknown. The crowd's roar said it all. A band that began the day as newcomers left as one of the defining forces of the entire festival. Woodstock had found its heartbeat, and it sounded like Soul Sacrifice.
What would you do if I sang out of tune?
When Joe Cocker stepped on the Woodstock stage that Sunday afternoon, the air was thick with exhaustion and mud. The crowd was fading, but the moment he opened his mouth, everything changed. That voice, raw, ragged, full of soul, cut through the haze like fire through fog. Backed by his powerhouse grease band, Cocker turned a Beatles tune into something biblical. This wasn't pop anymore. This was a gospel for the tired and the hopeful. He sang with the conviction of a man possessed. His body jerked with every line, arms flailing, veins standing out in his neck, as if the music itself was too powerful to contain. The muddy crowd roared back, feeding him every ounce of energy they had left. By the time he hit the chorus, "I get by with a little help from my friends," thousands were singing along, voices cracked and hearts wide open. It's one of those rare performances that transcended the song itself. You didn't have to be a Beatles fan. You just had to feel. The slow, bluesy tempo gave space for emotion to breathe, and the gospel-style harmonies made the hillside sound like a cathedral. You could almost see the relief on people's faces. A moment of unity after days of chaos, hunger, and rain. It wasn't just music, it was medicine. That soulful scream near the end, the one that seemed to rip from the depths of his chest, became one of Woodstock's defining sounds. Even the television broadcast years later couldn't capture the full electricity of it. This was Joe Cocker's arrival, a man who'd just gone from a Sheffield pub singer to a rock legend in 8 minutes flat. As the last chord faded, the crowd erupted, a wall of gratitude and disbelief. Joe Cocker didn't just perform at Woodstock, he gave it a soul. In a festival filled with icons, his voice became the cry of the generation itself, ragged, real, and unforgettable. When Janis Joplin hit the Woodstock stage, it was the early hours of Sunday morning, humid, dark, and charged with anticipation. The crowd was weary, but waiting, and when that voice, that lightning-in-a-bottle wail, tore through the night, the field came alive again. Come on, take another little piece of my heart now, baby." It wasn't just a lyric. It was a dare, a cry from the soul of the 1960s itself. Janis didn't sing, she felt. Every note cracked, burned, and soared like it was drawn straight from heartbreak and bourbon. The Cosmic Blues Band thundered behind her, horns blazing, guitars growling, drums pounding like a heartbeat that refused to quit. She stumbled, screamed, and laughed mid-song, pouring every ounce of herself into the mud-soaked morning. For the people who'd been camping in the rain for 2 days straight, she was the spark that reignited everything. There was something almost dangerous about how real she was. No filters, no pretense, just Janis. She wasn't performing for fame or fashion. She was trying to survive through the music. You could see it in the way she gripped the mic stand, as if it was the only thing holding her together. Her voice cracked at times, but it only made the moment stronger. Raw, human, unforgettable. When she hit that final chorus, something shifted. 500,000 people, from soldiers to runaways, were singing along. It wasn't a concert anymore. It was a communion. Janis turned her pain into their release, her fire into their freedom. She lived that song. And everyone knew it. As the last note echoed over the drenched fields, silence fell, the kind that only follows greatness. Janis Joplin didn't just perform Piece of My Heart at Woodstock. She gave it away, piece by piece, to everyone listening. And decades later, we're still holding it.
One pill makes you larger and one makes you...
As the haze of Sunday morning settled over Woodstock, a surreal calm spread across the crowd. Then came that unmistakable bass line, slow, hypnotic, and marching like a dream. Jefferson Airplane had finally taken the stage after dawn, and Grace Slick's voice drifted through the mist like a spell. One pill makes you larger, and one pill makes you small. It was more than a song. It was a mirror to the psychedelic heart of an era. The band looked worn from the long night, but their energy was electric. Slick stood poised and defiant in white fringe, her voice cutting through fatigue and fog with absolute command. The crowd, hundreds of thousands of faces glazed with rain and wonder, listened in stillness. Every word hit differently now. No longer a trip anthem, but an anthem of awakening. The lyrics, drawn from Alice in Wonderland, spoke to a generation tumbling down its own rabbit hole of freedom and chaos. Jack Cassidy's bass throbbed like a heartbeat, while Jorma Kaukonen's guitar shimmered in and out of focus. It was music that felt like movement itself, building, rising, then breaking open in that explosive crescendo that sent chills across the valley. When Grace hit that final command, "Feed your head," it was more than a lyric. It was a battle cry, a call for curiosity, rebellion, and self-discovery. You could see the expressions in the crowd shift. Some smiling, some stunned, some just staring, realizing they were part of something far larger than a concert. Jefferson Airplane had just turned a fantasy into a revelation. It wasn't polished, it wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it embodied the spirit of Woodstock. Defiant, imaginative, wide open. That moment proved that rock wasn't just sound, it was a state of mind. When Creedence Clearwater Revival hit the stage at Woodstock, it was well past midnight. The Grateful Dead had just finished a long, meandering set that left the crowd half asleep in the mud. Then John Fogerty struck that opening riff, a slow, swampy growl, and the entire field came back to life. Born on the Bayou wasn't just a song. It was a jolt of pure American electricity cutting through the haze. Creedence didn't need flash or psychedelic lights, just rhythm, grit, and Fogerty's voice like sandpaper on fire. Dressed in flannel and denim, they looked like the working-class heroes of the counterculture, and they played like it too. That swamp rock sound, part blues, part southern voodoo, echoed across the fields like a locomotive in the dark. The band was tight. No wasted notes, no nonsense, just straight-up rock and roll. The thing about Born on the Bayou is that it felt alive. You could almost smell the humidity, hear the crickets, feel the Mississippi heat even though they were in upstate New York. It was storytelling through tone, raw and cinematic, pulling listeners into a different world. And for the soaked, sleep-deprived Woodstock crowd, it was a reminder that American rock still had muscle beneath the peace and flowers. Fogerty's growl echoed through the night, blending with the mist like a ghost story carried on the wind. He played like a man possessed, stomping, sweating, and howling into the humid air. Even without the psychedelic theatrics of their peers, Creedence became one of the most talked about sets of the entire festival. Their sound was grounded, earthy, a defiant reminder that rock didn't need to be complicated to move you. By the time that last riff faded into the darkness, the crowd knew they'd witnessed something real. No frills, no illusion. Creedence Clearwater Revival didn't just play Woodstock. They grounded it. Born on the Bayou proved that sometimes the simplest sound cuts the deepest. When Crosby, Stills, and Nash stepped onto the Woodstock stage, they were nervous. This was only their second live performance ever. The air was thick with anticipation as the trio tuned their guitars and glanced at one another. Then, like sunlight breaking through clouds, came those flawless harmonies. It's getting to the point where I'm no fun anymore. A hush fell over the field. The chaos of the weekend seemed to pause for one breathtaking moment. What made this moment so powerful wasn't volume or spectacle. It was purity. 3 voices and 3 guitars blending with perfect precision, echoing through the early evening air. It was the sound of sincerity, of musicians chasing truth instead of fame. In a festival filled with distortion and rebellion, this was something gentler, yet every bit as revolutionary. Folk rock had rarely sounded so alive. You could see the awe on people's faces. Couples wrapped in blankets leaned closer. Strangers rested their heads on the shoulders of new friends. That's what their harmonies did. They made you feel like you belonged. Sweet Judy Blue Eyes wasn't about politics or protest. It was about human connection. And at Woodstock, that connection was everything. The intricate shifts of the song, the tempo changes, the soaring vocal runs were mesmerizing. Stills' guitar shimmered, Nash's voice floated above it, and Crosby's tone anchored everything with warmth and weight. When they reached that playful Spanish coda, do, 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 even the most exhausted in the crowd smiled. It was joy, pure and simple, captured in sound. As the last harmonies faded into the distance, the audience erupted in applause that felt both gentle and overwhelming. Crosby, Stills, and Nash proved that power doesn't always come from volume. Sometimes it comes from 3 voices singing in perfect honesty. Their performance of Sweet Judy Blue Eyes became one of Woodstock's most timeless moments, a quiet triumph amid the storm. It was protest disguised as a sing-along, and it remains one of the most iconic moments in rock history. And there you have it, the songs that defined Woodstock, each one echoing the heart of a generation that believed music could change the world. From Hendrix's feedback-fueled anthem to Crosby, Stills, and Nash's harmonies at dawn, these performances weren't just concerts. They were moments in history. More than 50 years later, they still remind us what freedom, unity, and rebellion sounded like. Which of these legendary performances takes you back the most? Drop your favorite in the comments, and if you felt that spark of nostalgia, give this video a like and subscribe for more trips through rock's golden era. Until next time, keep the vinyl spinning and keep Woodstock alive.